Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmitz_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmitz.
Welcome to it Wednesdays here. It's a Wednesday Big Ten Media Day edition of Hail Varsity Radio, as it's Elijah Herbel taking you through the show today. Chris Schmidt is on a plane headed back from Indianapolis as we speak, but never fear, Schmidt has left us a ton of great content as he's been working tirelessly all day for the past 2 days, getting interviews, getting just the latest scoops from Big Ten Media Days, talking to some of the biggest personalities around. Schmidt has been doing all of the legwork, so he gets a half day off today, kind of, as he flies back from Indianapolis. He'll be back in studio for our show tomorrow on a Thursday, but I told you he's left us a lot of great stuff. Got a ton of great stuff coming up today, as we're going to start this show off here with some Husker talk. Garrett Nelson, we snuck in his interview at the end of yesterday's show, but it deserved a little bit of time in the spotlight, so we'll hear Garrett Nelson's interview yet again here this first segment, only about 4 minutes long, so nothing too strenuous in terms of the rewind. We'll also hear what Trev had to say to the media yesterday, as Trev spent about 9 minutes with the media and said some good things. We'll hear that in full here in this first segment. We'll also get caught up live with Hail Varsity's Mike Babcock, as we'll get some of his reaction to what went down at Media Day yesterday. Is it really that big a deal that Scott Frost skipped through the opening monologue, decided to go straight to questions? We'll get Mike's take on that here in just a little bit. We'll hear from Cade McNamara yet again today, as Cade talked about how impressive the venue was in Nebraska. That's worth hearing again, so we'll hear from Cade a little bit later in hour two. We got Indiana tight end A.J. Barner coming your way this hour, though, as well as John Schmitz, Minnesota's starting center. Schmitz will be with us here at 4:50. No relation to Chris Schmidt. In the next hour, P.J. Fleck, head coach of Minnesota. We also have Peyton Thorne, the quarterback of Michigan State, and Jack Ebling, a multi-time Michigan Sports Writer of the Year award winner. He sat down with Schmidt, and we'll hear from that all before Cade McNamara, and we'll wrap the show up. But here, before I get too in the weeds about what we got coming up, let's hear from Garrett Nelson, as Garrett sat down with Schmidt yesterday morning, really before the Big Ten Media Days got underway. This is about 8 o'clock yesterday morning. Garrett, kind enough to give us a little over 3 minutes of his time, and sat down with Schmidt. He starts this conversation off by talking about what his expectations are for the year this year, as Garrett's really emerged into a leader, maybe the heart and soul of this team. And here he is talking about what he expects from himself and from the team this season.
The fantastic, career, but I have a higher expectation for myself. I expect more of myself. I want more for myself. So just improving on the season I've had before. And that summer was a big part of it. Had a really deep sit-down talk with my dad. Truly taking these, 9 months of spring and summer before the fall, and being truly professional about what you're doing and planned out and thought out. Not saying that I wasn't taking it seriously before, but really honing on every single detail of my life and my lifestyle, how I become the best player I can be, the best leader I can be, the best teammate I can be.
Garrett Nelson's with us here at Big Ten Media Days on KFOR Alpha Media, and that sit down, that's a grown-up thing to do. Was it a difficult chat? Was it a chat that you had with your dad that was refreshing? I mean, was it emotional? I mean, take us through not necessarily the specifics, but just the details, I guess. It
was all. I mean, my dad's my best friend, and he will never lie to me. He wants the best for me, and if having that hard conversation or emotional conversation during that time that needed to happen, and it happened, he always has my back, and I know that forever. But having his guidance and understanding where he came from as a Division I wrestler, and how I can improve and put some of those aspects of his life into my life, apply it to the football world and me as a teammate and as a leader.
Garrett, where can this defense go in 2022? Really solid defense last season. You lost some pieces. You've added some new faces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, putting it on my shoulders personally, when coaches say that we need one more sack, or my expectations as a rush end and everybody in the D line room to come over the walls and get that one more sack and get more turnovers and be more ferocious up front. Just as a position group, that's what we want. But as a defense, it's, like you said, we had a very solid defense last year, and building off of that block and understanding that's the standard now, and we can only go up from there. That's what you can expect. Garrett
Nelson's with us here on KFOR. Garrett, a thought on your unit on that defensive line, some new faces and some old faces you specifically, Caleb Tanner, of course, O'Shawn's in there, and then the secondary. How are both those units going to mesh this year as we say goodbye?
Yes, they're separate units, but yes, we're on one defense, and we have to understand that we are all tied in this giant system together. Being honest with each other, like you said, with the accountability and bringing everybody together, almost like in a volleyball huddle, and understanding, what we need to do on this series or on this player, this part of practice, and all collectively being one mind and understanding that mindset and that mentality that we have, that black shirt mentality. We found that last year. We know what it is. We know what the standard is, and we got to hold everybody accountable. That and we talk about it every day.
Garrett Nelson, appreciate seeing you again, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for stopping by.
Of course.
On the cover of Hail Varsity Magazine. Garrett, you take care, bud.
Thank you so much.
Right,
you do.
There he is.
So there's Garrett Nelson, who sat down with Schmitty yesterday on, it would have been on the morning show on KFOR, as I was bright and early for Garrett, getting out there and talking with Schmitty. We also heard yesterday from Trev Alberts. Spent a lot of time with Frost's comments and the players' comments, but didn't spend as much time on Trev's comments. Trev had some good thoughts yesterday as he talked with the media for about 9 minutes. Let's listen to that in full, and we'll also get Mike Babcock's reaction to this coming up next segment. But here is Trev Alberts talking to the media yesterday.
Well, you're never comfortable in these positions, but it is different. It's been good, getting to know a lot of the other ADs and presidents and conference staff. So I think you get into a little bit more of a groove and understand what to expect. But the challenge is the amount of change and the amount of transition in intercollegiate athletics is a time where there's not a lot of comfort and not a lot of time to sit still. So we had a great day-long meeting with all the ADs and Commissioner Warren yesterday, and just trying to sort through some of the things that face all of us. And don't have all the answers, certainly, but I think we've defined all the challenges, which is really important, and just trying to do the right thing for Nebraska and also for the Big Ten Conference.
How can the USC and UCLA move? How can that help Nebraska?
Well, first of all, I think it was incredibly strategic. I think it was really bold. And I think in a time of change, having leadership that's willing to be bold is really important. So I really saluted the other ADs, the presidents and chancellors, but also Commissioner Warren. I think it's wonderful. I mean, you're talking about two amazing brands that, the Big Ten's very proud. We've got a lot of great institutions with strong brands, and certainly these two bring a lot. I mentioned this previously, but I had a tremendous experience getting to play at UCLA, and we happened to win the game. So, but we didn't win by much. But getting the chance to play out in California was a special experience. So we got a lot to work through. There's some easy things to point to as challenges in terms of integrating them into the conference. But as Kevin always says, it's 24, so we've got some time. But I think they're going to be great additions to the Big Ten.
How much better do you feel like you know Coach Frost now as opposed to last year? And what's been the most revealing about how he goes about his business and his job?
Well, it's like anything else, whether it's your marriage or just friendship, right? It takes time to get to know somebody. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. And I talked, I think, when I first, back in July a year ago, we talked about trust, and trust goes both ways. Coaches have to earn the trust of administrators. Administrators have to earn the trust of the coaches. So I think just being transparent, sharing information with Scott, working through, getting his perspective, and slowly I think it kind of naturally, organically evolves into some trust where he can bring some things to me, I can bring things to him, and we can work through them together. So I'm really, really pleased with where the relationship is right now. I'm pleased with where football is. We haven't won any games, but I'm pleased with how bold and strategic that Scott and the staff have been in trying to make the changes necessary to affect the change needed to win games in a very difficult conference. And by the way, as you just mentioned, Andy, it's not going to get any easier. we're bringing in really challenging brands. So our job is to figure it out. And we're going to have a much better chance of figuring out if we're doing it together rather than doing it in silos.
What do you want to see this season out of the team? I know it's not specific wins, but what do you want to see on the field?
Well, I mean, I think we want to see what everybody wants to see, right? A well-coached football team that doesn't quit, that's physical, and in key moments makes the necessary plays to get us over the hump. I mean, we talked about this last year. I mean, this is going forward. This is never going to be a deal where most every single team is going to have some pretty equal talent. There might be some that have a little bit more, but you're talking about the very granular details of how we operate, and that's going to be critically important. And so what I've been pleased about is Scott's willingness, and he's done this on his own, to dive into those details, to find solutions, to try to correct those, because they're absolutely going to be necessary. I know some of you have written about and talked about one-score games, and how do we, it's 100% true. It is what it is. Every time we walk out on the field, it's not going to be a situation where we have significantly more talent, and if we just don't turn the ball over, we're probably going to win the game. It's kind of how it used to be. It's not that way now, and now we've got to find a new strategy. So, I think those are the types of things that you want to see, the cohesion of the staff, a team that plays together and plays hard, and everything I've seen, I think we're heading towards that.
You have said you don't want to attach a win total that would represent progress. Why is that?
So you guys can spend all year going, well, this was the total, and now they've got this many games to get there. I just think you can create some unnecessary. The other thing is, the reality is, you can have a really good football team what happens if week 5 you're starting running back and quarterback and defensive end all are out for the season with injuries? I mean, I think there's some other factors that can play into things that happen to a team. And so I just think it's unwise to, listen, we all are well aware. We understand what pressure is. Every single coach in the Big Ten is under pressure to win. We are in the competition business. That's not going to change. I've said it before, we don't get tenure in athletics. So winning is kind of not an option for us. And so we're just slowly building back some of the momentum that's necessary. And fortunately or unfortunately, we get to start with a conference opponent in Ireland, which, I think in a way is wonderful because it gets the attention of your team. I tell you, first practice tomorrow, you look at the schedule, we better have some great practices because we don't have a lot of time to create the team necessary to compete.
So what needs to be on Scott and staff's agenda over the next month before they leave? What's the biggest focus that they have to take care of before the first game?
Well, I think, again, not knowing all the X's and O's of what they're working through, Mitch, I will only say, I think given the challenge of the portal and how many new coaches and players we have, I think finding a way in a short window to meld all of those personalities and expectations together, I think is going to take great leadership. And I think Scott can do that. I know he's working hard on that. But that's going to be really critical because, a team full of talent isn't necessarily a team. And so taking talented individuals and creating and melding a team, I would think is going to be critically important to him and for him, and I think he's focused on that.
How has hired Mark Whipple accentuated any of Scott's strengths? Have you seen him maybe be able to lean into some things he's good at?
Well, I think when you have coaches like Mark and Mickey and some of the other coaches, I mean, you understand, they're bringing experiences to Nebraska, working for other head coaches or being a head coach himself or even NFL experience or working with different personalities of players that I think really can help Scott. It's just a broadening of your perspective. I think having a coach that's had to create systems and play calling in multiple situations. I mean, every conference is different. What you're going to do in the NFL is likely different than what you're going to do in the ACC. So I think a lot of it is just perspective. When you sit around a table with different experiences, different perspectives, and different abilities, it has, it's just going to impact you, I think, in a positive way, as long as you're receptive to it. And I think Scott has certainly been receptive to it.
Are there strengths and weaknesses to a team wanting to play for a coach? Maybe you can draw on your own experiences here. Players talk pretty often openly about wanting to help Scott win, not only for themselves, but for him. Are there strengths or weaknesses to pinning some of that on wanting to win for a coach?
Well, I wanted to win for Coach Osborne, I can tell you that. I was scared not to win for Coach Osborne, but I don't know. I don't want to put too much on that. I mean, we play for Nebraska. This is about Nebraska. We're going to try to do everything in the best interest of Nebraska. I think Scott feels the same way. But I do think the team is a close team right now. Again, we haven't played any games. Everybody feels pretty good right now. Everybody's undefeated, but I think it's important to take advantage of some of that cohesion that you're talking about. I didn't answer that very well. I'm sorry. I didn't know how to answer it. Sorry. You asked too hard a question.
Yeah. How much does the sellout streak stress you out? And do you look at it any differently now as opposed to a year ago, especially with the fan survey and all that?
It doesn't stress me out because I will tell you, as I mentioned before, sitting in the meetings, yesterday with the ADs. I mean, every one of the ADs talks about our fan base, how incredible our fans are, and that experience when we go to Memorial Stadium. So it's really important to us. It's important to me. It's more reflective of the fans, and so we've got some work to do there. If we haven't done it already, I think we're going to be releasing some additional information about additional mini-ticket packages where our team's doing everything they can. We want to keep that intact, but we need to do our part on the field, and we've got to have a product that people want to come and experience. So it's important to us. We're going to work as hard as we can to maintain it, but we'll do it the right way.
Hey, it's Schmitty. Want to tell you about a fantastic opportunity to work for a rapidly growing company that also enjoys the benefits earned with having competitive, stable history of work over 20 years. FSC. The FSC Edge. It's a leading technology innovator serving governmental agencies. Expert services helping worldwide patent offices meet strict processing and publishing timelines while delivering exceptional quality. They support some of the world's largest patent offices throughout the U.S. and Europe. That includes the European Patent Office, the German Patent and Trademark Office, and the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. The only group of companies worldwide to provide such support to all three of these agencies. Working at FSC, you have a chance to work with fun people with great attitudes and learn about patents. You're not on the phone. You're not customer-facing. It's casual dress. And the work environment, it's a new environment with over $2 million in improvements. You have access to generous benefits packages, company support for health and wellness, and you do impactful work on a national scale. Make a difference. Their team's constantly growing, and they're always looking for new people to join their mission. Check out what's available today at jobs@fsc.com.
And we're back.
Fellas, you think we could listen to the radio
on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome! Back in on a Wednesday edition, the Big Ten Media Days edition of Hail Varsity Radios. We got plenty more Big Ten Media Day content coming your way from various teams, various schools, various people. Excited to hear from PJ Fleck next hour. Later this hour, we'll have John Schmitz, offensive lineman from Minnesota, as well as A.J. Barner, Indiana tight end. And plenty more coming your way a little bit later in the show as well. But we're starting this show off by talking some Huskers, and excited to welcome in historian and author, Hail Varsity Magazine. It's Mike Babcock joining us here on a Wednesday edition of Hail Varsity Radio, his usual 4:25 time slot. And Mike, it's been a busy couple of days out at Big Ten Media Days, and we've gotten a lot of insight, not only from Nebraska, from schools around the Big Ten. How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay, Elijah. And, the interesting thing, when I think about this, obviously I didn't go to Big Ten Media Days. I've not gone to those. I think maybe the first one. But, back in the day, they used to have the Big 8 Skyriders Tour, where you'd spend 10 days traveling around the conference, and you would actually get to know people, and, it was such a different thing. And now it's I don't know if you find out some things, but I don't know if you find out a lot. And that was one of the things that interested me about what Scott Frost said. It's very close to the vest for the Huskers, it sounds like. And we already know about the restriction on not getting the assistant coaches available to the news media. I just think that's I don't know how much people learned about Nebraska, certainly from Scott Frost, because of the things that he said there.
Well, Mike, before we get too deep into Nebraska, you got to tell me about this Big 8 tour. You can't just intro with that. 10 days on tour. Did you go visit all the schools in the Big 8? Explain to me how that worked real fast.
Yeah, and the reason it was 10 days is because we spent a couple of days in Colorado, a couple of days kind of catching up. And so it started in Kansas City. We flew, and I don't remember what the sequence was, but we flew on a private plane. I don't know. It was kind of a scary thing for people like me that don't like to fly anyway. But so you flew to several of the schools, obviously Colorado down to Oklahoma, and then take a bus to Oklahoma State, I think, and then or vice versa, and then you flew to Iowa State, and then you would fly maybe back to Kansas City, and then you would drive to Kansas and Kansas State, and you would spend one day at each place. And you would interview the coach, and you would interview players, and then there would be a dinner that night, and the coach and the athletic director and the assistant coaches would be there, and there would be an interaction there. So you would get to know coaches. You would get to know, obviously, sports information people on a very personal level. So over the course of time, it was very comfortable. Like when you'd go on the road to conference games, you knew people. It wasn't as distant as it is now. And, the Big 8 Skyriders, that was a big deal, and they always picked a Rookie of the Year, which, some of it was if you like to indulge a little bit, and after you got your stories filed and they had the dinner and so forth, people went out and did a little drinking and so forth. But if you were kind of a unimpressive person like me, you didn't do that kind of stuff.
Mike Babcock's with us here, Hail Varsity Radio. And Mike, let's get back into Big Ten Media Days the past couple of days. And you were right with Scott Frost keeping his cards close to his chest. Pat Fitzgerald even said as much yesterday, saying if the Nebraska media wants to report any stories, he'd love to read everything they got, because they're just fishing for anything that they can get regarding what Nebraska's game plan might be come week 0. And after a summer of thinking we might be getting closer to knowing what the offense is going to look like and knowing Mark Whipple is going to be calling plays, yesterday kind of brought us back down maybe towards reality of, well, Mark Whipple is going to be calling the plays, but Scott Frost, he's still going to be in the car. He's going to be maybe even a backseat driver of sorts. He's still going to be very involved with this offense.
Yeah, that was interesting. He described it as a fun collaboration. And from what I've read about Whipple and so forth, he's kind of takes care of his own responsibilities sort of thing. And Scott, doesn't want to give away the offense completely to somebody, turn it over completely. So fun collaboration, I guess, is the way he wanted to describe it. We'll see how that is. But, I don't think we're going to have a very good sense of what that offense is going to look like, really, unless we take a look at what Whipple did, at Pittsburgh or whatever, until Nebraska plays in Ireland. And, the one thing I guess we could say with some certainty is that the quarterback job is Casey Thompson's to lose. I thought that was kind of an interesting comment, that there wasn't necessarily going to be, flip a coin kind of a thing going into fall camp in terms of who the quarterback was. They were going to identify the quarterback, and the other people were going to have to battle to try to unseat him. But if things go as expected, that it's going to be Casey Thompson if he stays healthy. I think that's pretty clear. You can conclude that, but you can't conclude much of anything else as far as who's going to be in that offense and what the offense is going to look like in any detailed sense.
Yeah, Mike, dare I say that we're leaving Big Ten Media Days with more questions than we had going in, just because there was uncertainty going in to be for sure. But, you look at what he said about the offense, and we can get into this here with the whole skipping the opening monologue. It really just felt like a coach that didn't necessarily want to be there, didn't really want to give anything away, and there's been a lot of reaction to that today. Do you think Scott Frost's appearance and how he acted at Big Ten Media Days, from skipping the opening statement and whatnot, do you think that's being overanalyzed today?
No, I don't think so, because, it was a little surprising. Do you have any, make a statement? No, let's just go with the questions kind of a thing. To me, it just reflects the obvious, which is he's under pressure to win, to be successful, however you want to define that. If that success is 500, success is 7-5, 8-4, whatever it is, he's under pressure to do that. And so the way he's responded to that is, let's play this thing close to the vest. It's kind of us against the world, and the world includes pretty much everybody outside the team. We're gonna do some things, but we're not gonna talk about it. And it's gonna be a surprise for people. Obviously, there's some speculation because of the players that you have and what their skill sets are and so forth. But that, to me, it was just, I don't know if people went there thinking they were going to get answers to questions that they had, but it didn't surprise me on that level. It didn't surprise me. It just kind of surprised me that he didn't make an opening statement. He just said, let's ask the questions, and then when he asked the questions, he needed to clarify a couple things, one of which was, I'm not backing away from the offense. It's a fun collaboration kind of a thing. That was the one thing that I really took away from that was, he's still going to be involved in the offense. But there's a lot of responsibility. As we've talked before, Frank Solich found that out. I mean, he tried to do it, and it didn't work, coordinating his own offense. Tom Osborne was a unique person to be able to do that. So there are so many responsibilities as a head coach. You've got to take care of all of them.
Mike Babcock's with us here, Hail Varsity Radio. And Mike, let's switch to the defensive side of the ball. And Garrett Nelson, I think by all accounts, had a very good Big Ten Media Days if you're into judging that. So Garrett, was called the best leader Scott Frost has seen in a while. It's really clear that he's emerging not only as the leader of this team, but as the heart and soul of this team. So Garrett Nelson being the leader of a team heading into 2022, how does that strike you compared to leadership in years past?
Well, I think they've always had that kind of lead. They've had good leadership, but when Scott Frost says he's as good a leader as there's been here in a while, that's pretty high praise. And Travis Vokalek described him as I wrote it down, heck of a competitor and also a psychopath. When he gets on the team, when he gets on the field, that's the way he plays. He's 100 miles an hour all the time. And the one thing that Nelson said that to me was impressive. It wasn't arrogant. It wasn't arrogant in any way, shape, or form in the way he said it was. Somebody has to be the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. It might as well be him, that's his focus. Now, whether he's going to be that or not, probably, that's irrelevant. It's just his attitude going into things is, if somebody needs to be the best, why not me? That's how he's working. That's what he's working in a certain way, and he's leading the team in a certain way, not only by example, by what he says, and he's very articulate, and he's very passionate about what he does, and I think that's really important. He's a good example of someone who has made progress each season that he's played. He's gotten better each year, and that has to do with his attitude and that never slow down, always going 100 miles an hour no matter what. And, so it didn't surprise me that he was impressive there, that he was the guy. But, Travis Vokalek and Quentin Newsom, they were good as well. Newsom talked about the competition in the secondary and how he felt good about that, and Vokalek had some insights and talked about, having to sit out 1 year, the difference in the transferring now with the transfer portal and when he transferred. It was well represented, I with the players that went there. But again, the big thing for me was just Frost and his indication that, hey, we're going to keep this close to the vest. It's not going to be. It's going to be kind of a scramble, I guess, for media covering fall camp to some extent, because a lot of it's going to be speculation and opinion, because you're not going to get a lot of specifics from the coaches. Well, you're not going to be able to talk to the assistant coaches, from the coordinators, the head coach, and from the players.
Mike, appreciate your time today, and you can find Mike on Twitter at MDBabs. Follow his work this season. And Mike, we'll get caught up next week. Thanks for your time today, bud.
Hey, great talking to you. Be safe.
When you think of Union Omaha, what comes to mind? The high level of play, the inviting atmosphere, the amazing promotions, huh? I spoke to a former player, and when I asked for one thing that made playing for Union Omaha so special, he responded with the people, his teammates, the staff, and the fans. The super passionate, crazy, awesome fans, that is. Why am I bringing this up? Because I want to remind you that the people are just as important to the team as the team is to them. There are plenty of matches down the stretch, and we want to see you in the seats. Get your tickets now, before it's too late.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back in on a Wednesday edition of Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. That's Elijah Herbel filling in for Chris Schmidt as he's on the way back from Indianapolis. But we got plenty of Big Ten Media Days content to bring you, as Schmidt's been working tirelessly for the past 2 days. And he just, from Minnesota to Indiana to Michigan State to Michigan, he's been sitting down with the who's who of the Big Ten. We got another guest coming your way right now, as yesterday afternoon, Schmitty sat down with Indiana tight end A.J. Barner. He is going to be a big piece of that Indiana offense this season. Appeared in 12 games last season, only 1 start, but he was really proving himself to be a guy who can be relied upon, and they're going to need to rely upon him this season. So here's Schmitty sit down with A.J. Barner from Big Ten Media Days.
Back into it here on Hail Varsity Radio, Radio Row. We welcome in A.J. Barner, tight end. And A.J., you came on and walking down the sideline here. Tell me about the dream to get here at the end of the season.
Yeah, it's just an awesome experience. I'm just extremely happy to be here. Just got to thank God for this opportunity. I'm just extremely honored to represent my team and its university.
Hey, dude, tell me a little bit about yourself. What got you to the Indiana program? This program is coming off a tough season, but on the heels of a great season during COVID.
For sure. I'm from a little outside Cleveland, Ohio. I played defense really my whole life, and then my junior year and senior year I played tight end. I was a little bit under-recruited, but IU had been talking to me for a good amount of time, really since my junior year. So just the way things fell and the opportunities that I had a couple other Big Ten schools and ACC schools reach out to me, but I just felt extremely comfortable with Coach Allen's staff just because they had recruited me since the start.
A.J. Barner, tight end, Indiana with us, and I think of those matchup issue wideout / tight end hybrid guys that have come through Indiana. How does it fit your game with what the offense wants to do, and how have you continued to grow in this offense?
Yeah, for sure. I just feel like I'm a guy that, brings a lot of size and speed to the table, and anytime you bring another tight end in the game, the defense has to make a decision whether they're going to bring in a safety, a cornerback, or a linebacker, and whichever one they do, whether it's a secondary guy that might give us an advantage in the run game, or if it's a linebacker guy, then hopefully we can get a mismatch against him. So either way, I feel like I bring a lot of things to the table.
Is there a defender that kind of comes to mind that is tough on tight ends in the Big Ten? Because you nailed it. You've got the linebacker, the safety option, and you can mismatch that and get great coverage or be a little bit more physical on the run game at times. But are there some teams or some players that makes it difficult for you, the hybrid defenders that come to your mind?
Yeah, really, all teams in the Big Ten have great players all over the field, and I just feel like whether it's a guy up front or in the secondary, it's just kind of part of the position where you have to be prepared for maybe a guy that has some weight on you to block him up front, or a guy with some speed on you. But I feel like just my preparation and going against guys like Cam Jones and Micah McFadden, and then seeing how Peyton Hendershot worked. And, he learned from Ian Thomas, who's a starting tight end for the Carolina Panthers. So I feel like I've just had a lot of good preparation, and really whatever they throw at me, I'll be ready for, and I'll be learning on the fly too. So I'm excited for it.
Was it difficult or different for you to flip from defense to offense?
Just because I had grown up playing defense my whole life, really at first I wanted to play defense, but I just feel like with that defensive mindset and playing tight end too, I can take that to the position also, and just being mean and physical up front and helping out in the run game, and then also with pass blocking too. And also I feel like down the field, especially on vertical routes and at the top of my routes, just being physical at the top of the routes is something I'm good at, and something that I'm looking forward to do this year.
Let's talk speed. AJ, and you've got the size, man.
For sure.
But your speed, is it fair to say you're one of the faster tight ends in the Big Ten?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like that my speed's definitely one of my strengths as well. And we did body fat percentage, so I'm sitting at 6'6", 250 pounds. I'm only 11% body fat, so I feel like that's just, I don't carry around much weight that isn't good weight, and I feel like that gives me a big advantage when it comes to speed.
Tell me about Coach Allen, his connection with guys, you being one of his team leaders. How does he get you guys motivated, kind of instill that energy in you?
Yeah, I feel like just the culture that Coach Allen's created with the Elliott mantra, and he just brings a lot of energy, and it's focused energy too. And he's just a big rally the troops guy. He's an Indiana guy, so you know how much he cares about the program, and we just love taking the field for him because we know how much he cares about us. And it's not like that everywhere, but it's definitely 100% authentic. Anything you see about Coach Allen, that's the truth. He doesn't put on a show for anybody, and he's just a great overall person and a great coach.
Pretty old school in a good way with his sincerity.
Yeah, 100%. Old school in the way that he likes to play football, a physical Big Ten brand of football, and just a guy that I love playing for because I know he has my back and I have his. What's
the outlook on the offensive side? You're back. You're going to catch footballs. You're going to be making blocks. But talk to me about the quarterback setup, the run game, and how this offense that was just printing points 2 years ago. You put up points last year as well. But how do you take another step from last season?
Yeah, I feel like we got plenty of weapons, really. I mean, just guys kind of coming into their own, and then in the transfer portal, and then just some freshmen coming in too. But, at the running back position, we got Sean Shivers from Auburn, which I'm sure you've seen the highlight of him.
Yes.
Taking somebody's helmet off before. Josh from UNC, Jalen Lucas also back there, and then David Holloman and Trent. And so we have a bunch of guys back there that are ready to step up. And then in the receiver room, we got Cam Camper, a really, really talented JUCO player who's got some length out there. And then Emery from UNC also, who's played a lot of football. DJ, who unfortunately got hurt last year, but he had a great season before that, so he's coming back. And myself at tight end. And then the quarterback room, too. We have plenty of solid options, and that's going to be a competition going into camp. We got Bazelak from Missouri and Tuttle, who's been here for a little while, and Dexter Williams, who's also another one of my class, who's just a really talented player. And he's starting to, figure it out in terms of just like all his reads, because he's always had the mobility. So I feel like really whoever we go out there with, I'm extremely confident, and I'm just ready to take the field with them September 2nd.
Tight end for Indiana, AJ Barner with us here. Hail Varsity Radio. We're out of Lincoln. You guys come to Lincoln. Were you a part of the travel roster back in 19?
No, so actually my freshman year was 2020, the COVID year.
So no.
Yeah. Right. So really, I've only been here for 2 years. I'm a pretty young kid. I'm only 20 years old, but I'm excited to make the trip.
Well, it'll be good to see you, man.
Yes,
another big-bodied tight end and hybrid wideout for Indiana, putting up plays. Nice to meet you.
Yes, sir. Appreciate
Thanks for the time.
Yes, sir.
So it's AJ Barner joining us on Hail Varsity Radio. And AJ, interesting cat in the fact that Chris Minson, that wide receiver tight end hybrid, not only did he play tight end last season, he also blocked a punt and returned a punt. So they just had him doing a little bit of everything. He talked about the speed. He talked about the size. He's going to be a guy that Indiana is relying upon for the next couple years. So it's good to get caught up with AJ Barner out at Big Ten Media Days. We'll get caught up with John Schmitz coming up after the break here, as we've had a good first hour. Garrett Nelson, we heard from him yet again in the first segment today. We also had Mike Babcock joining us. That was AJ Barner. And coming up next hour, we also have PJ Fleck, Peyton Thorne, Jack Ebling, and more, as we're bringing you all the content we got from Big Ten Media Days. We'll continue after this with Minnesota offensive lineman center John Schmitz joining us on Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One last time this hour, let's get caught up with John Schmitz, Minnesota offensive lineman. We did have some technical difficulties early in this one. They will be resolved after about the first minute, so bear through the first minute and enjoy John Schmitz, Minnesota offensive lineman.
Here at Big Ten Media Days, John Michael Schmitz is sitting with us here from the Minnesota Golden Gophers, the starting center. John, it's good to spend time with you. Thanks for popping by here at ESPN. So tell me about Chicago.
I am born and raised in south suburb of Chicago, about 35 minutes from the city. Grew up a White Sox fan.
Okay.
So, yeah, definitely love the city.
John Michael Schmitz, center with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. He's with the Gophers. Tell me about your introduction to Gopher football, and as you've kind of worked your way up and been an anchor on that line, what's the mentality? What's the culture like? Minnesota's had some incredible offensive line here the last several years. You had a really great run at Minnesota.
Yeah. So I first got to the University of Minnesota in 2017, June 2017. I was actually part of Fleck's recruiting class at Western Michigan.
Okay.
Yeah, and he
the team that went to the Cotton Bowl, right?
Exactly. Yep. So I was committed to him, and then after that season, he left for the University of Minnesota and gave me a call. I was like, "Hey, do you want to come?" And I was like, "Definitely." Like, it was my dream playing in the Big Ten. And after that, it was just history. And we've had a lot of success on the O-line. I got to give props to Coach Callie. Just the work he puts in and the standard he has on us and the coaching he has is unbelievable.
John Michael Schmitz, senior center with us here at Hail Varsity. This is going to be a young line, the anchor. What do you expect from Minnesota here in 2022?
I wouldn't say it's a younger line. I would say it's a less experienced line.
Guys have been in the program.
Exactly. We have guys that have been in the program that have been waiting their turn patiently behind the big core up front from last year. We graduated 4 seniors last year, so, I mean, they learned from some great guys in front of them, and I'm very excited about this offensive line group and what it has in store for us in this season, 2022.
Who do you love watching in the NFL? Who's your center?
I like, I would say Ryan Jensen or Alex Mack.
Okay.
Yeah, Ryan Jensen just because of how nasty he is, and then Alex Mack is because
Jensen is a little nasty.
Yeah, I do like that mentality that he brings up front, and I definitely. And then Alex Mack, just because I like we watch some of his film for our offense and stuff. Okay. So nice feel.
How's Mo doing? How's he looking?
Mo's great. He is. I'm
great
glad,
back, man.
Yes, I just love Mo so much. He's a great friend, even better football player, and I'm glad he's back.
John Michael Schmidt, senior center, Minnesota, the Gophs. As you know what, he's engaged. He had some leftovers, and he stopped by Big Ten Media Day, Radio Row. John, nice to meet you.
Yes,
appreciate
thanks for having me.
A different spelled Schmitz, but Schmidt there. Thanks for your time.
Storm Chasers fans, July 23rd is Faith and Family Night at Werner Park. Come watch the Storm Chasers take on the Iowa Cubs. And if you're one of the first 1,500 fans in the gate, you'll even take home a Bobby Witt Jr. Baseball America Player of the Year bobblehead. As much as that is a mouthful to say, that's an item you'll want in your collection. If that's not enough to sell you, though, how about a concert after the game? Top 10 Christian recording artist Corey Asbury will be on the mic. His music is awesome. Bring the family, make some memories, and book your stay at Werner Park July 23rd.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmitz_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmitz.
Continuing rolling through a Big Ten media edition of Hail Varsity Radio as it's Wednesday edition. Elijah Herbel filling in for Chris Schmidt today. Chris Schmidt is currently on a plane somewhere on the way back from Indianapolis. He'll be back in for a Thursday edition of Hail Varsity Radio, but I've said it a couple times on the show so far today. He has left us plenty of content for the show today as he's been sitting down with the who's who of the Big Ten for the past couple of days, talking with them. Yesterday we heard from Barry Alvarez, Joel Klatt, Garrett Nelson, and more. And another good show coming to you today as we're halfway through. Back in hour one, we heard it from Mike Babcock, who joined us live to give his reaction to Nebraska's appearances at the Big Ten Media Days yesterday. And Mike's interview will be posted up shortly on ESPNLincoln.com. We also heard from AJ Barner and John Schmitz just now. And we're going to go from one Gopher to another, from John Schmitz to the head coach, PJ Fleck. And a big tip of the hat to the Doug and Daddy show out in Kearney as Doug Duda sat down with PJ Fleck and was gracious enough to give us permission to use this interview here on the show today, as PJ was a man that was in demand yesterday, and Doug got a chance to sit down with the head man out at Minnesota and went about 9 minutes with him. So enjoy as Doug Duda sits down with PJ Fleck, head coach of Minnesota.
Doug and Daddy show with one of our favorite times of the year. Get to catch up with a lot of great folks here at Big Ten Media Days. PJ Fleck, the head coach at Minnesota, obviously at the top of that list. And, he's already told us that we're wearing too much red today, Larry.
Yeah, in the past, last year, we both got caught wearing maroon and gold. Literally.
You set yourselves up for that. That's not me just expecting that.
I just want to start with something that you don't know and you probably don't care about, but we all in the media make our predictions. And everybody said I'd been, on the sauce too much. I got back. I said, when we come to media days, this is where I learn stuff. Somebody's better than a championship game. I said it didn't matter what happened on opening night, win or loss. I didn't know all the injuries were going to keep you back. And you were almost there with all of those injuries. How close were you last year?
We were really close, and I think when you kind of look at our team, we might not be the deepest team or a developmental team. So when you kind of look at some of our best players, a lot of the older guys we have, and you lose your, All-American tailback in the third quarter against Ohio State, and he's a hoss now. He's a workhorse. Next thing you know, you're down five tailbacks, and then you have four wideouts, missing almost close to half the year apiece, and we had to do what we had to do to find ways to win games, and I think that's of a program and a culture. I think that shows that you're finding ways to win no matter the circumstances that get thrown your way. We were close, but I feel like we got a lot of guys back who've contributed a ton, who know how to win at a very high level, who've been close before. But again, we've got to be the best team we possibly can be for us to be able to have a chance like that. There's so many good teams in the West this year, and I think everybody's going to be really good, and everybody talks about the West being up for grabs.
Yeah, I suppose because everybody's kind of clumped together as far as the West goes. What does your offensive line look like?
Yeah,
coming back in. You've got. I've said it. I think the best tailback in the conference for sure. A good quarterback. Your receivers are going to be healthy. What does your offensive line look like?
Well, if you guys might know this, but a lot of the guys that started the game against you at Nebraska in 2020 are the guys that are actually playing now. A lot of people don't understand that those guys behind are guys that all had COVID. We had 30 plus guys out that game, whatever it was, and that was like our second offensive line, who are now older and now ready to step into those roles. We got a few transfers. Quinn Carroll from Notre Dame, who's a Minnesota that's back, who has 3 years left to play, and then Chuck Philolaga from Michigan, who was basically the sixth man last year from Michigan, who played a lot of football. We have one of the best centers in the country, arguably not one of the best, if not the best. We have a left tackle by the name of Ariante Ursary, who I think might be the best offensive lineman we've ever coached in 10 years. And then Axel Rutschmeyer, who played a ton of football for us at left guard. And then G'day. We've got 9 guys who pretty much played all Big Ten football. But we're losing 181 starts. I think that's what everybody kind of sees up front, and we're only replacing it with 35 starts. So everybody says, oh, well, they're O-line, but we might have a chance to be more athletic than we've ever been up front. And you look at the defensive line, it's the same thing. I mean, we lost 67 starts. We replaced it with 26 starts. But the guys are really talented. We're longer, we're bigger, we're stronger, we're faster than we've ever been. It's just maybe we gain a little, or we lose a little bit of experience, where that's what training camp's for. Build that experience, especially at the beginning of the year, build it more. And then hopefully.
This is the running back room. We know you've got Mo. About how deep is that room?
Yeah, then you look at Trey Potts, who basically filled in for Mo until he got hurt, and he's back, and he's been medically cleared by he has a lot of medical team that's surrounding him. Doctors and hospitals in Pittsburgh, our hospital, and Dr. Nelson, who takes care of us. The Indiana, Purdue people were absolutely unbelievable when he did get hurt at Purdue. A lot of people jumped in and really, really helped him and maybe even saved his career. So I know he owes a lot of people. He'll be ready to go in training camp here. You got Bryce Williams back, who's played a lot of football for us, played against you guys at home last year, and then came in January and shown us a ton of promise. So we got 4 or 5 backs again, and a lot of familiar names, but Mohammed's obviously the highlight name of that group.
Talking with Minnesota head football coach PJ Fleck here on the Doug and Daddy Show. Doug Doodle, Larry Baker, just kind of following up on a couple of things that Larry asked you. Are you surprised Mo came back? What went into that?
There was a lot that went into that decision. Mo's very cerebral. He's going to think that he does something. There was a lot of things because then you have the debate. You're always going to be 5'8", 5'8". It doesn't matter if you're Achilles. You'll get it healed. You'll come back. He didn't come back just for him. He came back for the team. He knew that once he got hurt. Listen, we're talking about the NIL. Got hurt, all of it went away, and that's unfortunate. But understands that. He understands what the real world's like, and he's more than just a tailback. He's an unbelievable person, and I think he wanted to be able to finish that off for him and his teammates because he's still going to be 5'8", and that's not going to change him as a tailback. He came back to put a different ending.
Secondly, if you're going to have a bunch of new guys on the offensive line, it's okay to have the big guy in the middle. You mentioned John Michael Schmitz. How much coaching and how much does he still be coached?
Well, I think that he's an incredibly demanding player. In that, and saying that he's demanding of everybody around him that they work to his limit. He's an unbelievable leader and an unbelievable connector. And the best thing about him is he knows what each guy needs on that O-line to get better, and he can deliver it in a way that you'd want a coach to deliver it, not just the same way. Everybody learns differently, and he has a very unique ability to do that to all the guys that he's surrounded with, and he's made that O-line better along with Brian Callahan, our offensive line coach.
Last one for me. How different college football has NIL, the portal being a big piece. How many scholarships do you keep aside for the portal versus high school kids? And just how recruiting is in this thing when we talk about NIL and so on. I mean, these last 12 months have really changed things.
Yeah, change is inevitable. Had change, but it's been one change for that year, or every 2 years there was a big change. Now there's massive amounts of change and all at once. And I think that's where people have had a hard time getting their footing. But, we're still going to be a life program. We're still going to look for the right fit. We're still going to run our program the way we run it. But I think if you don't change and adapt, you're going to die on the vine. I've always believed we're a high school developmental program. We still are. But that doesn't mean you don't benefit off the portal. And we're going to benefit off that. Does that mean I'm going to take 25 portal kids? No. But have I taken 6 to 7 kids? Absolutely. Because I think that helps you in misses in recruiting. It helps you fill those gaps. But it still helps you keep your core beliefs as a developmental football program of these high school student athletes and developing them freshmen all the way through their senior year.
PJ never talked to a coach that didn't have something to fix, even if Nick won the national championship or whoever got that done in the last couple of years. What were you still concerned about coming out of spring that you would need to get addressed immediately here in fall camp?
Yeah, I think there are two things I know our football team is for sure. We are athletic and we are fast. We are faster on paper than we've ever been. We're more athletic than we've ever been on paper. And that's a credit to our staff, our players, our recruiting. But every coach has a question going into the year. And since January, this isn't saying that I don't think our team is. We just have to become this. We have to become this really, really tough, connected football team. And I don't mean tough just in the physical part. I mean handling the adversity, overcoming the things that are coming our way, the resolve to overcome everything that will happen to us that we don't even know about, that we know will happen. We just don't know what it will be, like what happened last year. And if we can be a really tough football team, I know we're athletic enough, fast enough, connected enough to win a lot of football games. But that's going to be the big question for us. And I've told our team that, and they're on their way to becoming that.
You got the rivalry win last year. What did that mean for you?
Oh, it meant a lot. I think that when you look at the West, there's a lot of rivalries even being formed. There's so many close games in the West every year that it feels like every game is a rivalry game these days because everything is so close, especially in the West. And you look at, our one-possession games, and you look in 2019, we were 6-1 in one-possession games. Well, that's how Minnesota wins 11 games, right? Last year we were pretty good, but we were 9-4, but they could have went either way. We could have easily been a 5-7 to 11 win team again, especially in the West Division. We have a ton of respect for Nebraska. I have a ton of respect for Nebraska fans. They're very passionate. They know the game, and they've contacted me a lot.
Well, we get to see him in Lincoln on November 5th. Always the best. We'll talk again soon. Best of luck this season.
Appreciate you having me on, guys.
Coach.
Row the boat, Sky Mago Gophers. Thanks a lot.
So big thanks again to Doug Duda and the Doug and Daddy Show out in Kearney for sending that our way. We love sitting down with PJ Fleck, and he said it there at the end. Husker fans love him or hate him, passionate about Minnesota and PJ Fleck and what he's brought up there. And I guess no such thing as bad publicity. That's what they say in the public relations world. No such thing as bad publicity. It's all about how you spin it. And PJ Fleck, man, does he spin things to look in a positive light towards him. A real spin doctor PJ Fleck is. And it's good to get a chance to hear him on our show. So I can't thank the Doug and Daddy Show enough for sending that our way. So we just heard now from back-to-back Gophers, John Schmitz, as well as PJ Fleck. And let's get now to Michigan State as we got a couple of Spartans coming your way. Jack Ebling is coming up after the break. He's won that Michigan Sports Writer of the Year award multiple times now, and him and Schmitty sat down yesterday out at Big Ten Media Days. We'll get that for you here in just a second. But first, let's talk to the quarterback of the Spartans, Peyton Thorne, a guy who beat Nebraska last season. He talks about that here just a little bit in this interview, but he's a guy that's going to have to lead a different-looking Spartans program. We also get into the influence and what it's like to have Mel Tucker as your head coach. So without any further ado, here is Peyton Thorne sitting down with us at Big Ten Media Days. Big thanks to Chris Schmidt for this one.
Back here, Big Ten Media Days, day 2 with Hail Varsity Radio. Spartan quarterback Peyton Thorne with us. Peyton, good to spend time. Thanks for a few minutes.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I want to spend the first thought here is about last season, 11-2. That's a bit in the rear view, but wow, incredible season for you guys. What was your mindset? What was your expectation going in? You had a whole roster turnover, and man, you guys played really good football.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we had a very different team last year than we did 2 years ago. Obviously, we had some guys in the transfer portal and a new class of freshman receivers, or not receivers, just freshmen in general. I thought we had a good team going into last year, and then after the first few weeks of the season, we got guys that really believe, yeah, we do have a good team. And from that point on, we kept playing good football. Obviously, didn't achieve our ultimate goal, but I thought we put together a pretty solid season that I think our fans can be proud of.
What's your job as quarterback? What's your set of checklist look like, so to speak, as you go in for another season when it comes to playmaking, but also just being a leader?
Yeah, that's the focus every year is making sure that you're able to lead your team. When you're in the quarterback position, you're automatically put in a leadership role. And so some guys do different things with that role. But for me, I'm looking to put my best foot forward for my teammates, and work as hard as I can to improve my game the most I can to be as good of a quarterback as I can for our team and for our university. And so making sure everybody around me is right too, and then bringing guys along and holding each other accountable is a big part of our program, and pushing each other. And I think that if we do that, then we're going to have a chance to be successful.
What type of leader are you?
I would probably let my teammates, answer that question. I feel like,
you're vocal, or
I'm
lead
definitely,
example?
I'm definitely not. I don't think leading example is a thing. I don't think that you're a leader if you lead by example. I think that's the price of admission. And if you don't lead by example, then there's nowhere to start for you. And so I don't think leading by example is a thing. That's an expectation. And so you have to hold guys accountable. You have to hold yourself accountable for sure. And then, there's a lot of other things that go along with it, but, I feel like I'm a vocal leader. I feel like I'm not afraid to speak. I'm not afraid to challenge guys. And, that all comes back to relationships and being close with your teammates and being able to get on somebody, because if you don't truly know a guy and you don't have a relationship with him, then if you are just screaming your head off at him, then nobody's going to listen to you. So, that's a big part of it as well.
Peyton Thorne with us. Last question, Peyton, and it's wonderful to have you on. Go back to the Nebraska game and finding a way to get that victory.
Yeah, that was a big game for us to come out of that with a win. We were at home. Offensively, we really struggled. I did not play my best at all. Nebraska had a good defense, and they challenged us, and our defense stepped up and played an amazing game and ended up, being a huge part of the reason we won. And so we made plays when it mattered, and we ended up coming out of there with a win. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters, is that we got out of there in the win column.
Peyton, nice to meet you. Best of luck in 2022.
Appreciate that.
Good stuff there from Peyton Thorne out at Big Ten Media Days. We'll hear Chris Schmitz's interview with Jack Ebling coming your way after the break. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Like what you hear? High-quality radio and podcasts are just part of what we do at Hail Varsity. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor. I wanted to offer listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you can get everything we do, 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all of the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back in, it's Hail Varsity Radio. We're here at Lucas Oil Stadium. And Big Ten Media Days, Jack Ebling, my fast friend from Winston-Salem, sir. Good to see you. He covers Michigan State, 6-time Michigan Sports Personality of the Year. And how's Indy treated you? Did you get to St. Elmo's last night? I got in too late. I hope you had enough shrimp for you, me, and Costanza.
Well, we left at 4:30 this morning.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So we just cruised in, but it's always a pleasure to be on with the hardest working man in Big Ten.
Well, you're the best, Jack. I appreciate you. It's been interesting. Not a ton of insight for Nebraska. Trev was good though. It's just straightforward, straight guy. Shooter. Trev's incredible, and Coach Frost is ready for Nebraska. This is mile marker 2 of the great Schmidt summer travel out to Wake Forest.
That's right.
About a month ago. We're here towards the end of July here at Big Ten Media Days, and then a month from now we are off to Ireland, my friend.
Nice.
So
you're ready?
We have hotel and everything handled. So I just wonder.
Schmidt seems more German than Irish.
Very much so. Yes. Yeah. But Watzik or Andrews is my wife's mom's maiden name. So,
okay.
But she's staying home. So wanted to get your take here as you look at the West, Jack. Yeah. Wisconsin's picked, Cleveland.com. Kind of get it, kind of don't. Wisconsin always finds a way. Iowa, really good, but same as Wisconsin. What do you get offensively?
Yeah.
How do you feel about the Gophers?
I love the Gophers.
Yeah.
That's my pick. Minnesota will win the West.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have writing it down.
Yep.
but no, the question mark, and I was talking to their center, Schmitz, South Chicago kid. He was
almost
like,
Schmidt, close.
That's what I was like, hey, it's not quite the same, but we'll run with it here in Indy.
Tell him to correct the spelling of it.
I will not do that to a large offensive lineman. He was sitting next to me like you are, so I wasn't going to do that. But no, he's like, look, we're not young. Guys have been in the program. We're just inexperienced.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, Minnesota seems to do pretty well when they have inexperience. They find a way to get better as the year goes on.
Yeah, and I think they've got as good a running back as there is in this league.
Yes.
You got a 23-year-old quarterback who's played in 3 bowl games. I think you've got a potential Remington Award center. You know, it's pretty interesting with Schmitz and Tanner Morgan.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys had both committed to Western Michigan to play for PJ.
That's what Schmitz was saying, and then PJ's like, "No, I'm taking you to the Big Ten," and they're thrilled to go from the MAC, really good league, but to the Big Ten.
Yes, and I think that is a team to watch. They got some tricky spots on the schedule, but I like their chances. I'm not sold on Wisconsin. I'm not sold on Iowa, although I think Jack Campbell's going to be the defensive player of the year in the conference.
I think, Campbell, I hope he comes by Radio Row. Incredible linebacker.
Yeah.
But Iowa's schedule is not as fun this year.
No.
That's the thing. Nebraska's schedule lightens up just a bit.
Yeah.
Let's talk Sparty. I know Mel and the crew are going to be here tomorrow.
Yeah.
But your outlook here, what's the buzz around East Lansing? Is it a situation of, all right, maybe a step back, but more of the 7-5, 8-4 route, or does the Sparty fan base expect 10 or 11 or even better based on year 2?
I think they expect 9.
Okay.
And they would hope for 10.
Okay.
Vegas doesn't agree.
No.
Obviously, you're talking about 7.5. So there'll be a lot of money coming from Michigan, at least mid-Michigan, on Michigan State. But here's what happened last year, Chris. Michigan State played 5 close games, won them all.
Mm-hmm.
5 comebacks, including the game against Nebraska with that incredible punt return that tied the game. Nebraska played, I think, at least 6 close games and lost them all, right?
Yeah.
Didn't it lose 6 close games?
At least 6, yeah. I mean,
and they were all one possession?
They were all. The only game that was not one possession was Ohio State, and it was 9.
Yeah.
It was 9, not 8, not 7.
But when you have, a guy who can get some things done now, I'm looking at Nebraska being much improved.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really curious what's going to happen with Martinez at Kansas State.
I think he'll do really well down there. I think he'll do 8 or 9 wins down there, and they'll be right in the thick of it because he'll just have a running game. He won't have to do it all.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing for me at quarterback is, with Frost and Whipple, that dynamic, how much will Scott stay, I don't want to say out of it, but off to the periphery and let Whipple do his thing. And then what do you get from Casey Thompson? Do you get chemistry and leadership and buy-in from his peers? I mean, and this, Michigan State did with the guys they brought in on top of who they had there. I mean, it's not an easy mesh, and Mel pulled it off. But Mel's ready for the next wave of college football, Jack, because it is going to be free agency, and it is going to be about projecting and developing. I mean, Mel's
very adaptable.
Mel's pretty good.
Yeah.
When
you go from 2 wins to 11.
Oh yeah.
That doesn't happen very often.
But your 2 wins, I mean, you're one of his 2 wins in the COVID year, his first year there, you whacked an unbeaten Northwestern.
Yeah.
So he gets his guys ready for the winnable games, but it seems like Mel gets his guys ready for the big games, and there's not a lot of drop off. I know last year Purdue was a little bit of a surprise, but Purdue did that to Iowa. So Sparty, though, an 11-2 run, and then you had the Michigan game, was incredible.
Who is who is Nebraska's number 1 rival?
In the league here, I would tell you Oklahoma. I'm just
right.
I think it's Iowa. I think it's got to be Iowa.
Okay.
I think it's Iowa, and it used to feel, or you want to believe it was Wisconsin because of the Alvarez connection with Nebraska, but I think it's Iowa, Wisconsin, and I think there's a monster dislike or annoyance for Fleck by a lot of the Nebraska fans, and then but I also think, you know, how knowledgeable Nebraska fans are, Jack, they respect the hell out of him. I mean, he has won 3 straight against Nebraska, and he's done it with who are these guys beating Nebraska? That's a lot of this. With you look at the development that goes on in the league, and that's what D'Antonio was so great at do it with Michigan State.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Jack, tell me a thought here as we move forward and say goodbye. Is Michigan State going to be able to keep this run going against Michigan? How does that interstate battle project out here? Not just in football, but you know, basketball too. I mean, both of them. Can you both be good at the same time? Is my question.
Yeah, they were last year. They combined for 23 wins. They were 23-4.
Is that the norm, though?
No, it's not the norm. And for Michigan State, won 5 of the last 7 against Michigan at home and 5 of the last 7 against Michigan on the road. So the record's been the same, 5-2 at home and on the road. But when I asked you about Nebraska's biggest rival, for Michigan State, it's a little bit like what Nebraska is if you combine the Iowa series with the Wisconsin or Minnesota series. I mean, the whole season for them, it's a little bit like Ohio State and Michigan.
Mm-hmm. Sure. That's a one-game season.
They practice for Michigan every day.
Yes, they do. They need to.
Yeah,
and vice versa, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean,
but it's going to be fun to see. Peyton Thorne is back, and a year ago, nobody knew who the quarterback was going to be. They thought it might be Anthony Russo, a transfer from Temple. We still haven't seen him. Nobody knew who was going to carry the ball, and then the first play of the year, Kenneth Walker goes 75 yards, and 19 touchdowns later, he wins the Walter Camp Award and Doak Walker Award.
Did you go to the Miami game? Where did you?
Yeah, I did.
How big was it? I mean, that was incredible. Yeah, you had an unbeaten Hurricanes team. It's night game down there, and boom. What'd you make of Narduzzi's comments? I got to ask you that. That was last week. He's at Pitt now, but he's a longtime Sparty.
Yeah.
He was lighting up Mark Whipple for being too stubborn and not running the football enough.
Yeah, and I don't know why he is constantly looking back and trying to defend, but I guess people were on him saying, you know, you had your best team and you couldn't beat the 3rd best team in the Big Ten, so he's got to find an excuse. He can't say, well, I did a bad job of coaching when I led 21-10.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to say, well, you know, we didn't have our quarterback who was second in the Heisman race, all this stuff. Well, Michigan State didn't have
Kenneth Walker.
So, you know, you can make that case too.
21 points to 30 points. We're talking what each guys are worth.
Michigan State and Georgia were the only 2 teams in the country last year that beat 2 Power 5 conference champs.
Okay.
So the Spartans don't have to be 11-2, but I think if they can do a few things, fans are going to like it. They're going to like Mel Tucker. They already do. Those who can get past a $95 million contract.
Sure. Well, and that takes a little getting used to, but welcome to the new normal. And Kirby Smart says, thank you very much, Mel Tucker.
Yeah.
Not that Kirby doesn't have a title, but you get what I mean. It's exploded.
Right.
What's your projection here? Do we hear anything here before we pack up and go home with a TV deal?
No.
With the Big Ten? No?
No. But it won't be long. And I think it's going to be very, very close to $100 million per school.
Okay. That's very impressive. What's your pulse say? What's your magic 8 ball say about the Irish?
I think that there's so many things that point toward the Big Ten that knowing Notre Dame, it probably won't happen.
That is.
But, you know, hey, they seem to think if they can get $75 million and autonomy, Notre Dame doesn't like to take orders for it.
No, they want to be treated special.
Yes. And if it can do that, you know, give up a little bit of money, but be in a position where it can call its own shots. I just thought with Southern Cal coming into the league, that's such a long-standing rivalry. and Notre Dame always wants to travel. Well, now they're going to have a chance. And don't be surprised if at some point you don't get a Stanford coming in, or even Miami coming in. North Carolina is another team that I know the Big Ten would like. And if you brought in 4 more and brought it to 20, you'd go coast to coast and really capture the TV markets that Kevin Warren keeps talking about.
Absolutely. Jack Ebling with us, The Drive. He's the host, 6-time Michigan sportscaster, sports person of the year, radio and print. Impressive. My dear friend from Winston-Salem, we met and we talked ball. Let's just meet here back the first week of December. How's that sound?
That would be a wonderful thing.
Little Christmas red and green for football fans.
That would be ideal, and I hope by then I have enough energy when I can do a 3-hour morning show and a 2-hour afternoon show.
Jack, you're too kind.
Hello, listener. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to let you know about a special deal just for listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast. We're offering $10 off the annual subscription price. That means that you can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back in on a Wednesday, let's hear once again from Michigan quarterback Cade McNamara. He's locked in a tight quarterback battle, and what's going to be one of the stories of the Big Ten of fall camp. Michigan quarterback Cade McNamara coming off a great season. Schmidt got caught up with him yesterday.
Cade, hey, thanks for making time today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
How's the experience been? Did you guys get in late last night or early this morning?
No, we took the flight this morning.
Okay. So do you have to run off, or do you get a little steak and lobster tonight?
We are actually on a trip around the whole state of Michigan right now as a team. And,
so you're kind of doing a whistle-top tour type deal.
A little bit. I think, we weren't able to do it during COVID, but
sure. Coach
Harbaugh, a part of, getting recruited at Michigan is that you get the opportunity to visit really a remote location, a remote, really country during your experience. And my freshman year, we got to visit South Africa, which was one of the coolest experiences of my life. And this year, we decided to stay home. We decided to tour the state of Michigan, and we were able to visit. I mean, we've been gone for nearly a week now, and we're going to finish, and we'll be heading back to Ann Arbor on Friday. And it's been a great opportunity for the guys for team bonding and really to educate ourselves.
The trips are important, and being a kid who grew up in Nebraska, there's a lot of the state I've seen. There's part of the Upper Peninsula I've seen in Michigan that was a pretty wow factor. Okay. Old Tiger Stadium, but not the entire state. It's pretty gorgeous. Is there you liked it all, I'm sure, but is there a favorite spot that you hit here during this tour?
So far, it's been Sleeping Bear Dunes. I think we were just there a couple days ago. Mm-hmm. Just really, it's so beautiful out there.
Lake?
And, so you're overlooking Lake Michigan.
I bet.
And there's, the water is insanely clear. And, our tour guide actually said, that's kind of a bad thing because there's some kind of organism that's eating all the algae. So it's creating actually an invasive species. But,
I would cheer for clear water, wouldn't you?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that it looks sweet. It looks great on camera, but it's been, so far Sleeping Bear Dunes probably takes the cake, but, we're going to head up north, up to the UP later this week.
Cade, tell me what it's like to play quarterback for one of the great quarterbacks at Michigan. Your learning curve, the patience needed, and just how you were able to thrive. Really enjoyed watching Michigan football last year, power football, but that downfield passing attack that you were able to lead.
Yeah, thank you. I really love playing for Coach Harbaugh. I think him recognizing how well he played the position and the knowledge he's able to give me is really a great perspective for myself as far as where I'm getting this information from. I'm not getting it from, I mean, sometimes you could get really anybody. You're not going to get a coach who's probably played the position at such a high level who's coaching you. And, I get that in Coach Harbaugh, and, me and have a really good relationship. And, I'm very appreciative of him and what he has taught me.
Couple minutes here. Cade McNamara with us here, Hail Varsity Radio live in Indy. As Michigan, you're defending Big Ten champs. They were part of the college football playoff. Was there a tipping point game for you guys last season that turned kind of, I guess, solidified the fact it was a special season?
Yeah, if I'm going to be honest, I think of two games. I really think of Wisconsin first, and then, the state of Nebraska second. The University of Nebraska right there. I think, Wisconsin, for the majority of our team, was the first away game played with fans for probably over 50% of our team. And we hadn't beaten Wisconsin at Wisconsin.
Doesn't happen that often.
Really, and I think it was about 17 years. And I think that was Coach Harbaugh's first time ever winning an away game as a underdog,
Mm-hmm.
which is crazy. And for us to not only do that for the first time and then come out with a W, but secondly was the game against Nebraska was really the first time that we faced adversity. Nebraska played a hell of a game against us, and during that game was really the first time we faced adversity last season. And it was the first time I got sacked all season was against Nebraska, which is crazy. And what we were able to display was, after that game, I stated that I think this team's different, and I think it was because of that reason, because we were able to deal with adversity and to come out with a W. When I think in a tough environment like that, against a team who played us that well, in the past, I don't think we've come out with those W's.
Cade, speak to that environment. I've covered the team a long time. What's it like to navigate through that environment? Because that when it's loud and it's crazy and it's third and forever, those are moments that make or break and can either springboard or stop momentum.
Right. I say it every single time. I truly think the hardest place I have ever played is Nebraska. I think that atmosphere, I believe, is a blackout at night in a tight game. It was the loudest stadium I've ever been in my life, and I couldn't even hear my own cadence. It was insane. And I think playing in an environment like that, it's extremely difficult, especially on the offensive side of the ball, as far as cadence and really overall communication is difficult. You just eliminate one of your senses. So, I think that was a part of it too that made that such a monumental game for us last season, was how difficult the atmosphere was and us coming out with a win. It's a truly awesome place to play.
Cade, were you headbanging or air guitaring at the end of the third quarter with Thunderstruck, or were you just trying to talk to teammates?
I was headbanging. We were getting after it. You guys shut off the lights, and it was just red out there, and both teams kind of started merging towards the middle of the field. It was on from there, and it's a sweet place to play. I'll give you guys that.
Cade McNamara with us, Michigan quarterback, Hail Varsity Radio. From the win in Lincoln to the Ohio State win, it was throwback Ohio State, Michigan. It's snowing, it's cold, it's blustery, and you guys did some work. I had watched Michigan and noticed, once Harbaugh got to town, you guys are super physical, but you really showed how physical you were on both sides of the football against a team most of the league's been chasing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was such a big part of, why we won that game was, it was one up front, plain and simple. Whether it was Aiden Hutchinson in that defensive front getting to CJ, or it was our O-line just really dominating the line of scrimmage, and H2 running the ball right behind them. I think the game was one up front, and when you win the line of scrimmage, it's very tough to come back from that.
So where's Michigan sit right now from a great year? You stack on top of that, you're a returning starter, a leader in a position of leadership. You lost a ton on the defensive side.
how does 2022 look as we wrap up here?
I mean, I think, 2021 was, a really great season for us. I mean, we were able to lay a foundation for winning, for a culture that, we can build on. But as a program, we've really been stressing that was Team 142. Now this is a different team. This is Team 143. 143 hasn't achieved anything, and that's that's what we're going to roll with, and that's really the only mindset that we can really approach this season with, because otherwise we're going to be vulnerable.
Pardon the interruption, but I'd like to save you some money. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor of Hail Varsity, and I wanted to offer listeners of this podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you can get everything we produce, 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at hailvarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Wrapping up this Wednesday edition of Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery, as we put a bow on Big Ten Media Days. Chris Schmidt is flying back from Indianapolis as we speak, so send a prayer up for him that he does not encounter any delays in the airport. Those have been pretty common recently. I know a whole bunch of people who've dealt with them in the past couple of weeks. So Schmitty, no issues getting out to Indianapolis. Let's hope no issues getting back here, as he's got a show to do tomorrow. Schmitty will be back in studio tomorrow, as we look forward to that as we continue our reaction to Big Ten Media Days, and we start getting into a fall camp as Nebraska hosted their first practice of fall camp. No pads today, as I believe, if I remember correctly, the pads will be popping either this weekend or early next week, as they got this acclimation period they got to get through, where you go through padless practices, not walkthroughs, but definitely less intensity than you'll get with the shells or with the full pad practices. But nonetheless, football season is here as Nebraska gets fall camp underway, and what the remaining question will be over the next couple weeks as these teams get into their respective fall camps is what happens with the Big Ten's TV rights deal. And Scott Docterman, he sat down with Fox Sports president Mark Silverman today, who said that he'd be surprised if we get to Labor Day without a new deal announced in terms of that media rights for the Big Ten. Fox will still be the primary provider of Big Ten content, but we will have a new media rights member involved. Kevin Warren said that yesterday, excited to welcome a new member to this media rights agreement. And according to Silverman and according to Scott Docterman, the companies vying for that piece of the Big Ten media rights deal currently are CBS Sports, NBC, ABC/ESPN, one and the same, as well as Amazon. And Amazon's an interesting one because of the streaming aspect there. Could say Amazon be the company that provides you that Friday night Big Ten game that we've become accustomed to in recent years. Nebraska has a Friday night game this season, and you kind of wonder, could Amazon be the program that provides that? But there is some hesitancy, according to this article, among Big Ten administrators, because a lot of Big Ten fans don't have a television with capability of streaming. Cable is still the standard among the country, even though you do have more and more of that younger generation moving towards streaming options, and the Big Ten is exploring its options in terms of streaming. So could you be seeing some Big Ten games on Amazon next year? Maybe. We should know come week one over the next couple of weeks. As Silverman says, a lot of stuff goes a little bit slower in the summertime, people taking trips and whatnot, but once football season is here, this deal will start moving a little bit faster. And he says he does believe that this deal is close, but just because it feels close doesn't mean there isn't still a lot of money and a lot of negotiation that needs to be done as the Big Ten tries to get their media rights deal across the finish line. That'll do it for us here on a Wednesday edition of Hail Varsity Radio, as we took you through some of our interviews at Big Ten Media Days. Today we heard again from Garrett Nelson back in hour 1. We also heard from John Schmitz, Minnesota offensive lineman, and the head man at Minnesota, PJ Fleck. We had Indiana tight end AJ Barner, Jack Ebling, a writer from Michigan State, as well as Michigan State quarterback Peyton Thorne. So a ton of people you heard from today. If you missed any of them, check out the full podcast, Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, or check out the individual interviews themselves on ESPNLincoln.com. But that'll do it for a Wednesday. We'll check back in with you on a Thursday edition coming your way tomorrow on Hail Varsity Radio.